Hello, I'm Dr. Jigare Pancha, an occupational therapist. So here I have got you the another video of infections and tumors of musculoskeletal system. There are many more videos to know more things. Stay tuned to our channel. So this is again the continuation of the previous lecture, which is the part 5, and today is the part 6 of the lecture. So in the previous lecture, that is part 5, we have means I have explained about early first presentation about infected osteosynthesis, and further in this we have also need to consider the other variable factors like the clinical symptoms and diagnostic procedures. So in the previous diagnostic procedures, there is a medical history and clinical findings. There is maybe the pain after a few days, sudden discharge, because of gradual increasing swelling with newly exuding wounds, impaired wound healing, hematoma, erythema, swelling, and excessive heat. So these are certain things to consider in the cases of infection. As the full topic is covered on the infections of the musculoskeletal system and the infections post fracture and during the fracture, which causes delay, non or and malunion is again about the misalignment of the anatomical posture of the joint. So in these considerations, we should be considering this thing. Again, erythema, I like to explain, that is superficial reddening of the skin, usually in patches as a result of injury or irritation causing dilatation of the blood capillaries. So that all things are to be considered in this form of topic. And in the previous lecture, we talked about laboratory tests. In that is elevated white blood cells count or left shift. CRP remains elevated in the follow-up examination or increases again secondarily. In imaging, you have X-rays to give the radiological examination in which you can see the articulating surfaces. Is there any kind of infection? Is this the spacing between so? And also the other forms of alignment of the joint, malalignment of the joint, and many other things. You have indications of the acute treatment, maybe acute inflammation, suspected infectious arthritis, or wound with impaired healing, combined with elevated inflammation markers. Surgical treatment that talks about debridement, bone transplants, plastic defects, closure, and further in that it is plastic defect closure basically indicated when the following surgical management of arthritis or osteomyelitis and initiation of appropriate antibiotic therapy based on potential resistance. So this can be performed that form, and further in addition the soft tissue status must allow for the deficit closure. So these cases mainly involve the use of the split thickness skin grafts, mesh graft that is called, and local rotation flaps. Further, you have prognosis and complications, which are to be considered as follows in that form. In the necrosis, you have necrotic bone fragments, transition of infected, non-union, and chronic osteomyelitis. So this is all about it. So now we further move into clinical symptoms and diagnostic procedures for this. So here in this image you have that is various clinical symptoms of infected pseudoarthrosis. So A in the image A, you see the scar zone without the fistulas, then intermittent fistulas in between you can see in the figure B, and in figure C you have purulent fistula system. So there is again exudate of the certain materials which are being seen on there and the other forms. So you have medical history and clinical findings. So that is, it talks about difficulty in walking and load dependent pain are predominant. So basically when you encounter this kind of patient with this clinical picture as is shown in the figure on the left, so that represents that the person has a mobility issue, they have increase in pain, the again hygiene is the problematic situation in this, and because of that there is higher number of chances of infection. As I have mentioned before, the difficulty walking and load dependent pain are predominant. So as an occupational therapist, if you want to evaluate this kind of patient for further tasks, then this patient will have ambulation issue, that is self-care issue. He cannot move on from one place to another in a easy form. And so as you can understand, because of this kind of form, the person has a higher risk of fall in the bathroom, and because of that he or she may have chances of having another form of injuries in the other areas of the body if they fall, maybe the chance of head injury and further. So you need to train this individual for the to account for the pain and to enable for proper loading on the joints. And we as an occupational therapist should be considering for the maximum independence of the individual in a functional range to enable them to reach to their goal and further exploration of the environment and their issues. So the latter is absent if the periosteum surrounding uh, the non-union experience massive destruction due to the severity of the trauma. That is the load dependent pain I have talked about. So the load dependent pain are predominant, but then again it may be absent. As I told that if the periosteum surrounding the non-union experience massive destruction due to the severity of the trauma. So this is of decisive clinical significance for subsequent treatment, because the patient will be unable to comply with the load limitations, and if he is not able to comply with the load limitations, then you have the other form, then and will thus require special assistance. So spontaneous discharge of small sequestra may be observed in some cases. So as you can understand it, because walking is impaired, the mobility is impaired at certain point in time, and because of that the person is not able to take the load on the limb and cannot walk in a particular form. So imagine if it's happening in a young individual, maybe young around 30 or 35 years of age, another maybe in the age of 50 years or 55 years of age, another person you have is 70 years of age. So maybe they have the same problem, but their functional, their occupation, their role of life are totally different, because the role of life for a 35-year-old male may be to look after his family, to go for earning, to go for his job, to go for his bread and butter. And the other person who is 55 years of age has certain other roles in his life, because he is more of a peer group and maintenance of the life. The younger one is in a race of life, because he is starting his career and moving on further. 50 of us is a maintenance phase, and still that person will like to go out to go in his age group individuals, and also he has a certain load of family which is supposed to take care at that particular age. Then you have the 70 years of age, because in that case, in that age, the person will need to take care of himself, that is self-care activities. There are other pre-morbid issues, maybe the person who is suffering from BP, from diabetes, from any other issues, so that all to be taken care. And of course the weight of the person is a major issue, because you may have higher chances of body weight in the individuals who are 55 years of age and who are more than 70 or 70 years of age compared to the young one. So that is another form which can does the problem, because as I mentioned here, because there is a major problem in the weight loading system, difficulty to walk. So that is the issue which we see in the weight loading system. So when the person is not able to bear weight properly because of pain or because of the infection, and that leads to abnormal gait and malalignment in the walking mechanism, so that may increase the risk of fall, and the person may fall at even the flat surfaces or even the uneven surfaces, and also when he's climbing stairs or walking through the obstacles. So the high risk of falls, and the person is more having a chances of getting the injury in different areas of his terrain. So the patient need to be encountered in a therapeutic view in this one, because we have our role at this point of time, and at every phase of the pathology of this kind of issue. And so also it is a kind of a collaborative approach, which you need to be collaborate with the orthopedic surgeons, with the doctors, and also with the nurses, with the whole multidisciplinary team. And to enable to proper recovery of the person, to help him to return to his job, to his work, to his occupation, and to earn and to maintain and enable him to maintain his economic balance and any further situations. So that is in the medical history and clinical findings, this all to be considered. Further, you have functional status assessment of the lower leg. So it is so this is actually an important in view of what are often very elaborate reconstruction efforts, sometimes lasting more than 1 year. So here it involves deciding between a reconstruction attempt and amputation as well. So there are certain factors which favor the preservation. Okay, so that is the foot and the knee. So the foot is intact plantar sensitivity, that is no or correctable pes equinus, pain-free ankle joint with above average mobility or fixed at right angle. So these are the indications for the foot in favor. These are the factors for the foot which favor the preservation. That is intact plantar sensitivity, means when you are placing the feet there is no problem, so that sensitivity is okay, and the person can bear weight with the flat feet on the floor, perpendicular to the floor. Further, you have no or correctable pes equinus. Again, you have proper feet, not the equinus shape as well. And further, pain free ankle joint with above average mobility or fixed at right angle. So that again, the ankle joint is very much important, because that is again the load bear. Because see, in the biomechanical point of view, if you see that when the person is having ambulation, or when the person is standing or doing any weight bearing activity, so there are two reactions, basically the hip reactions and the ankle reactions. So there are, if you know that the person is a more risk of fall, the person who is older, and the in the young children who are learning to walk, maybe 2 year, maybe 1.5 year or 2 years or 2.5 years of age child, you will see their walking pattern is different compared to a 5 or 6 year old child. So the thing is, because they have only single reaction, not both the hip and ankle reaction which we have. So that's why they have higher chances of fall, because they don't have the ankle reactions, and because of that they might have higher risk of fall at this point of age. So that is very important to consider, and that's why the risk of fall basically is very much need to go, because here also there is a chance of infection. So they can have even fractures, because here the bone is again brittle compared to the normal bone, calcium deposition and further things. So because of infection the chances are worse. So in that case, fall, see, at any age fall is not preferable. Fall is a fall, is a kind of a injury, and which is not need to be supported in certain form. So that's why we see that these are the foot factors in turn to preservation, and to avoid any kind of amputations of the limb. Because because it involves deciding between a reconstruction attempt or amputation, because that is a very severe and important things to consider, because reconstruction amputation. So we need, it is good that it is being preserved and formed in that particular way of performing it. Then the other thing is knee. So in knee, that is above you have above average mobility, or no severe or painful osteoarthritis, or no or correctable malposition, axis or rotation. So in knee, again you have another locking mechanism when the person is standing or having any kind of mobility. So that all things to be considered in this particular activity and uncertain task. So in knee, again I'll repeat, that is above average mobility, which is very much preferable, because you have a higher pressure on knee when you are climbing the stairs or walking uneven surfaces, or suddenly you're heading in a dip, or any obstacles. So knee is very important for the weight bearing and in the mobility. Then no severe or painful osteoarthritis. Again, osteoarthritis of knee very common, so that should not be there. There should not be any kind of pain, because that is, because see, is very simple. If there is a pain, you have a defense mechanism, you have corrective mechanism, because that your alignment will be changed and you are at a higher chance of fall. And see, I'll let you know. The thing is, let me discuss that the person who's saying OA of knee, so their walking pattern is maybe lurching gait, or there is a very abnormal gait with the present, and because of that, the other structures apart from the normal weight loading structures are at par, and they are given a further load compared to the normal walking pattern. And because of that, there is a multiple destruction of the adjacent structures of the knee joint or the knee joint capsule, and also there is higher pressure on the other knee which is not painful, and ultimately in a long term situation both knees are affected. So that is what the procedure is being followed by this pathology and in certain ways. So that is very much important to consider in this form of task. And further, you have no or correctable malposition, that is axis or rotation. There shouldn't be over rotation or abnormal axis of the knee joint and the COG which is passing behind the knee joint, or the proper alignment and work position of the knee should be in correct form. So this is how this particular information is being obtained by the several factors for the preservation about the foot and the knee. In the knee, I'll just revise it again for you in the quick moment. That for the foot is intact plantar sensitivity with uh, you can say with no or correctable pace equinus, pain-free ankle joint with above average mobility or fixed all right angle, and in the knee is above average mobility with no severe or painful osteoarthritis or no uh, correctable or correctable mal position, that is axis or any kind of rotation. So that's why if you see in this clinical findings of this, that is limping or use of crutches, impaired mobility, occasionally intermittent fistulas, but also complete fistula system. That is, you can see in this figure in the images ABC which I shown in this diagram in this slide. With the various clinical symptoms of the infected arthrosis, that is scar zone without fistula, intermittent fistula, and purulent fistula system. So that's how it is being differentiated. In the next slide, we'll be further talking about the investigation systems, investigation tests like the white blood cells, CRP, which are often normal or only moderate or abnormal. And in the next slide, I'll be showing some pictures of the X-rays for the in investigation purposes of this kind of issues. So in the laboratory tests, as I mentioned before, that is infection parameters are obtained by the white blood cells or CRP and are often normal or only moderately abnormal. But you have imaging system, that is the X-rays, which you see here. So the thing is that standard X-rays, so these are the most important you can say basis for the diagnosis. In addition to the follow-up examinations, recent images in four views, the anterior, posterior, lateral, obliques, are especially informative. So that's why we in the X-ray system we generally have that anterior view, posterior view, lateral, or obliques, so are especially informative. So further, these four views are also suitable for monitoring post-operative progresses of the individual. Basically, these views I have mentioned here for your understanding. That is, in the image in this here, you can see there is fatigue fracture following insufficient bridging of an infected non-union by the means of analogous spongioplasty. X-rays in four views are anterior posterior. It is A. B is from the front view, C is from the lateral, and D is from the exterior. Only B reveals the full extent of the deficit. So these four views are also suitable for monitoring post-operative progress. The condition of the non-union of particular interest, the extent of an existing bone defect, uh, periosteal reaction, residual foreign bodies, metal, uh, cement beads, sequestra in the bone, and soft tissue. So these all images, if you see, so these give you a clear picture of particular understanding and how the if the defects are formed and in the contrast to the existing issues. So if you say that examining the available X-rays in the chronological order provide the most useful information in order to estimate the bone necrosis, because bone necrosis is very much important to understand the occurrence of the infection in the bone, because if this necrosis is not being taken out, then infections can be very much dangerous at certain point, and as we have talked about how infections can affect the individual. So taken together, they enable functional process to be identified over time, periosteal reactions, the fusion of the bone fragments, local bone hypertrophy, but also sequestrations can be observed or at least summarized. So, in diagnosis of an infection, three-phase uh, scintigraphy of the skeletal, possibly in connection with a SPECT or CT scan or tomographic supplement, the suspected diagnosis. So, particularly in the case of infection, non-union, and chronic osteomyelitis. So, periosteal bone formation also requires a living periosteum and provides evidence of vitality of the underlying bone. So, under infectious conditions, newly formed bone, for the most part, are susceptible to infection. There are some expectations. So, if you say the new periosteal bone may centralize the segments and the sequestra. So, the lack of periosteal reaction over a prolonged period is indicative of necrotic bone. So, the necrosis is very much important to understand that how the necrotic bone forms and how it can be affected. So that's why if the bone segments appear more dense than the surrounding bone over time, then this is an indicator of necrosis. So if two adjacent bone fragments fuse together, then at least one of these fragments must be vital. Following fusion, the ongoing remodeling process will cross the fragment margin, so potentially revitalizing dead fragments. The formation of the irregular edges with fine corners on the surface of the bone is indicative of the osteoclast activity in a region with the bone necrosis. So, say if small or large bone fragments separate from other fragments during this process, then these are called sequestra. Okay, so if small or large bone fragments separate from other fragments during this process, so this is called as sequestra. So the bone remodeling process originating from vital areas of the bone combine at the same point with those involving the formation of sequestra from the dead areas of the bone. So at this point, any local sequestra are successively surrounded by new periosteal bone formation. So temporary administration of antibiotics may inhibit local infection activity and impede sequestrations, thus fostering the revitalization without being able to heal the infection. So under unstable fractures condition, infections can massive delay in bone healing or make it impossible for the bone to heal at all. So so in the investigation purposes, as I just mentioned that the X-ray is very much important. This X-ray not only give you the understanding about the articulating surfaces of the fractured bones, but also it gives you the understanding about the any chances of any infections or any malunion or there's a delay union or non-union. Because in this kind of consideration, the presence of infection is very much important to consider, and it is to be weighed off at the first priority. Also, there is CT scan. We see that is a computed tomography, that is possibly with contrast sinogram. So this is the most sensitive examination method for sequestra. Sequestra is just mentioned, that is the parts of the bone fragment coming out from the normal alignment which cause the sequestration, and which goes for the chances of infection or the malunion or non-union or delay unions in certain extents. So extensive experience is needed to differentiate between the bone irregularities following complicated bone healing in areas of infected bone necrosis and sequestra. So generally there is another radiological examination which is being conducted on this basis, three-phase or anti-crinocyte or uh, scintigraphy. So that is generally SPECT or CT scan is also being involved in this and this helps to assess bone viability and localize any kind of infection, and supplement SPECT or CT provides better anatomical resolution. Then another, that is magnetic resonance imaging, that is MRI. So this is used to clearly reveals the zone of the inflammation based on the edema, but does not reveal the sequestra. Plays a subordinate role in therapeutic decision making. So this is more of in our role that we understand the particular formation of the particular bone and its alignment. Further, you have fistulography. So this is very much useful to understand the presence of any kind of fistula and the types of fistula, whether it's purulent or the, you can say, the intermittent fistula or scar zone without the fistulas. So in this, that is particularly useful in operating room. So the fistula are injected with a mixture of methylene blue and X-ray contrast agent, so that is clearly visible on the screen as per the requirement of the investigation. So the fistula are as I told, injection. So this enables the fistulas to be traced with the image intensifier, and in operative imaging using the blue trace up to bone, not but not inside the bone itself. So that's how you can see in these images which I mentioned you for here, and this how certain radiological examination is being done for the bone on this basis. So we as a therapist in this form can help the individuals to maintain the ambulation, the mobility on the particular basis, because here the risk of fall is very much important. So now in the investigations, as it shows the differentiation between the healing and the alignment. Also, if you imagine that there is a kind of a malalignment of the joint, then what all things can be a problem. With the malalignment, there will be a mal force, or the abnormal distribution of the force throughout the line of action, or throughout the line of weight distribution. And in that cases, there will be an abnormal pressure on the articulating surfaces, and there can be a chances of refracture when there is a certain harsh or forceful situation, and all the person is faced up in such a forceful situation. Maybe suddenly a foot is dropped into a dip, or suddenly slip of a feet on the stairs. So in this kind of harsh or abnormal unusual situations, the person can encounter another type of fracture, or that malalignment can be again fractured. So that's why this malalignment of the joint is to be considered and to be intervened in particular form. So in the previous slide, as I mentioned you, that there are certain you can say infected pseudoarthrosis. So there is a different areas, that is scar zone without fistula, intermittent fistula, purulent system. So this purulent fistula system shows a high level of infections, and because of this high level of infections, the healing is abnormal, and the weight bearing process is being altered. When the weight bearing process is altered, it is painful. You cannot place your feet properly at a particular point, and you tend to have an increase in amount of the pain, and because of that pain, there are high chances or risk of fall for the individual, and they may end up in another kind of fracture. So so that's why you see the thing is this issues takes place. Further, so that's why in this X-ray is very much important to know, and to know the alignment, the particular. So the infection, so the imaging diagnostic, that is if radiology is used to diagnose the infection, the pathophysiology of the infection must be understood in addition to the imaging. In the pathophysiological terms, distinguish the term, that is acute infection, the chronic infection. The acute is vasodilation, increase neutrophil and monocyte penetration, exudation, and migration. And in chronic infection, that is proliferation of lymphocytes and macrophages in the tissue, vascularization, and scarring. So the methods of imaging diagnostics, as I mentioned before, that is this is just to summarize the thing altogether. that is conventional X-ray examination, computed tomography, that is CT scan, MRI, magnetic resonance imaging, and scintigraphy. Then single photon emission computed tomography, that is SPECT or CT. Then positron emission tomography, that is PET scan, PET or CT. And there is conventional X-ray. The X-ray scans can show the bone remodeling in the cases of osteomyelitis and prosthesis associated infections. And however, the osteolysis and loosening are often associated with aseptic process. So this reduces the specificity of this radiological signs. So serial X-rays over a certain period can measure changes to the cortical bone and migration of a prosthesis. Say rapidly progressive and or irregular periprosthetic osteolysis suggests an infection, and further anterior posterior lateral views and possibly additional oblique views can greatly increase the predictive value. So this is just to inform you about the X-rays and certain forms, and mainly to look for in the X-ray are about the bones, that is the density, sclerosis, sequestra or osteolysis, loosening of the prosthetic joint or internal fixation devices, surrounding tissue reactions, and that's how you see the conventional X-ray and for the particular information in regards. So that's how you do for the for this infectious investigation and certain views of the bone and also the fistula with the infection and purulent fistula. So that's all for the today's lecture and regarding certain information of the infections of the bones and tumor. Further, tomorrow we'll be conducting the part 7 of this topic, the infections and tumors of the musculoskeletal system. Thank you. These are the references which I mentioned. You can go through it for better understanding and in the deeper understanding of the topic.